We offer even our bones, our everything to others, and in doing so we attain the full perfect enlightenment. If we try to retain anything back for ourselves, that is samsara, that is existence, that is suffering. Namala Janju Bado Danika Sinji Daginji Jogi Pesa Namaki Dola Benje Sange to Pajo Sange Jadan Sugi Janamala Janju Bado Danika Sinji Daginji Jogi Pesa Namaki Dola Benje Sange to Pajo Sange Jadan Sugi Janamala Janju Bado Daginji Jogi Pesa Namaki Dola Benje Sange to Pajo. So that is the prayer, hopefully invoking if we're worthy, invoking the Buddha into this place, to this area, to this location, into this room, because we are in the Buddha's era. Buddha Shakyamuni, this is Buddha Shakyamuni, and we, from our personal point of view, would project a character onto him. But actually that is not true. What we must understand is this manifestation, what arose here in this world 2,500 years ago, was the end of a very long line of rebirths of virtue, pure virtue. And all the details of those lives are told in the many sutras. Buddha mentioned about many of his past lives. There are tales such as the Jataka tales, and many you can read about many of Buddha's past lives. And it can become confusing. The details of these lives can be confusing, and so I think it's very important to know the common thread. And from this common thread, through his previous lives, we can learn how to live, how to practice. That's the important thing, how to practice now. And the common thread through Lord Buddha Shakyamuni's previous lives, of which there were supposed to be 300,000, but this common thread was so strong in him that he completed his duty within 180,000 lives. So what I don't want to get into too many details because it would be too complicated and long-winded, and we need to crack on, as we say. But basically, he did it in 180,000 lifetimes because he had this, like I say, secret common thread which is lacking in us and which is what we need. And it's just simply the sweetness and warmth of the heart towards others. And it's almost too simple. It's almost too obvious. It's almost nowadays a bit corny or cheesy. And people don't realize the deeply, deeply profound spiritual significance of the warmth and respect for others. Upon this warmth, unequivocal, indestructible, stubborn, aggressive love for others, we can attain all the stages of the path. That's all we need. It's very simple. But we are distracted by survival. We've got the survival instinct problem, fight or fly, which is ruling our minds, ruling our lives. And then we've also got all the other details of the Dharma. If we're interested in Dharma, we can get carried away with the details. And this can distract our mind with too much thought and concept. And it can all just get very confusing. Spiritual life can get very confusing. Worldly life is very confusing. The survival instinct is very confusing. And we just end up very confused. So I'm going to try this evening to make it very simple. And that is altruism, completely overlooked by 99% of the population of this world, the humans, because of, like I say, the survival instinct. And so our practice going away from here tonight, first of all, very, very basic on the physical level, of course mental level, physical and verbal are all based in the mind. Our intention when we speak, our intention when we act, all comes from our state of mind. And so our state of mind is not our intellectual understanding, it's how we feel in our heart towards others. And what we do at the moment is we are concentrated constantly, consistently, we are concentrating on how our heart feels towards ourselves. How our heart feels towards ourselves. We never really contemplate mindfully, we never consider how our mind feels towards others. And this notion or situation of our heart in relation to others is the whole key to the real spiritual practice. And the reason we can talk as Buddhists about the real key to the full enlightenment is because actually only in Buddhism is the whole path available. In all the other religions, they don't actually have the final section, the final stage of the path, which causes the complete emancipation. I'm not saying anything bad about other religions. Other religions are absolutely fine because they are like, all religion is like medicine, different types of medicine for different types of illness. By illness, I mean mental delusion. So millions and millions of types of beings with millions and millions of different capacities and views and aspects and outlooks and emotional delusions, etc. So the many types of medicine are required to cure many types of, as I say, delusion, emotional delusion, obstructions of the clear, pure mind. But you have found the Dharma, and the Dharma is the most authentic, most profound, deepest, highest. And the reason I'm saying all this is also so that we constantly have respect for this form, which is called the Nirmanakaya form. And it basically means the pure essence of mind light was reborn or born for the final time in this world 2,500 years ago. And that mind, pure mind light, came out of the mother's side as a golden light and transformed into a human baby. And that human baby, if you were doubting whether it's just a normal baby, a normal human being or not, this will end that doubt, because that golden light turned into a baby which spoke immediately and took 7 steps in, actually they say 4 directions, but in reality it was 6 directions, because he took 7 steps to the north, 7 to the south, east, west, but also what we call zenith and nadir. Zenith and nadir actually means all the way in and all the way out, but it manifested as up and down. And at the end of the 7th step of each direction, he proclaimed that he would send from now on until the end of samsara a cloud of Dharma which would rain blessings on all beings. And so that's unusual for a baby. And the other thing you should know is they talk about the Buddha as a baby after first appearing in this world walking on the earth. This is also not true. The feet never actually touched the ground. They say 4 inches above the ground, as it never touched the earth. And under each, as the baby took each step, a white lotus bloomed underneath each footstep. So there was, in the end, there was 7 white lotuses to the north, south, east and west, But then it was all completely covered by the rain of flowers from the clouds. From the moment the light emitted from the left side of the mother, it started raining flowers. And no one had ever seen any of these flowers. They were all what were known as celestial blooms, celestial flowers, and they were unrecognized by any of the people in this world. And of course, eventually they disintegrated, but they were knee deep. Apparently it was eventually the surrounding forest and everything was like snow of heavenly flowers. So this is an auspicious, obviously very auspicious. There was rainbow lights, etc., etc., and it basically heralded the pure nature of our mind entering into a realm for the sake of all beings, a purely altruistic act. So this being that was manifesting was enlightened before. They talk about the Buddha attaining enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, the royal tree in the centrally located land, which is now called Nepal and India, Lumbini. But actually, this being was fully enlightened in the pure realms. And then, when we talk about full enlightenment, we're talking about, one of the lines that the Buddha, as he was emitted into this world from the mother's side, that one of the first things he said was, "This is my final birth. I will not return again." And so you can say it was the last one, and therefore he attained what we call parinirvana, the final enlightenment in this life. But it's not quite as simple as that. Anyway, the simple way, the easy way to understand this is what we call the bodhisattva motivation. The bodhisattva motivation is completely selfless, and this is what we need to learn. This is where we devote our lives to other beings completely, absolutely 100%. We offer even our bones, our everything to others, and in doing so we attain the full perfect enlightenment. If we try to retain anything back for ourselves, that is samsara, that is existence, that is suffering. If you're not sure about the suffering of existence, if you're not sure about the suffering of worldly life, being a being, then study it. You check for yourself. Very, very important. The one mistake, the big mistake that people make is they ignore the suffering of the world. They ignore the suffering of existence, as if they are living in some kind of parallel universe where suffering won't affect them, where suffering doesn't exist. This is actually a very close version of ignorance, because in Dharma the real ignorance is the self-grasping, the self-cherishing. So we can't call it pure ignorance, but it is ignoring the suffering. Ignoring the suffering of existence is something very well honed, very well tuned, very conditioned about the ego. The mind, since beginningless time, has developed in birth after birth after birth after birth, and here we are now in a place where our mind has got a coping technique set up that completely smothers, tries to get us to ignore suffering and just grasp at pleasure, just grasp at enjoyment, just grasp at comfort. It comes naturally to us now to try to avoid suffering and discomfort, and immediately adjust. As soon as we feel uncomfortable, immediately adjust. And that's what we're doing with our mind all the time. And that is that's the main symptom of self-cherishing. And so what we do now as Buddhist practitioners is we change our stance completely and reverse it. And what we now are concerned about, deep in our heart, genuinely, is the discomfort of others. And we try to adjust others, not verbally, we're not intrusive, but in our wish, our aspiration is for innumerable beings Absolutely every being without exception. We don't have to pick a certain being, a type of being. There's no types, there's no certain aspects. So I'd like to explain this practice because it's the main practice and we haven't got long. So basically, I would just like to say, whenever you deal with one being, a single being, try to do this. But you will have to tune it, you'll have to learn, familiarise the mind with doing this in meditation. When you meet a single being, when you deal with any single being, even if you just see someone on the television, see a picture in the paper, it doesn't even need to be a real being. You see all beings. You see all beings in that being. There's no individual personalities, there's no individual identities, there's no individual people. When you see anyone, a dog, a mosquito, any being ever, it reminds you immediately of all beings without exception. That's quite profound. And unfortunately, it's extremely rare, it's unusual, and it shouldn't be. Because the ultimate truth is we're all the same. The ultimate truth is we're all exactly the same. We're all born the same. We all die the same. Living is the same. Seeing is the same. Hearing is the same. Thinking is the same. Consciousness is the same. Bone is the same. Blood is the same. Air is the same. We're all born with what is known as 5 aggregates. The first aggregate is form, and the other 4 aggregates are mind. So there's a bit of a difference there. But the actual principle, the basic root of all of these 5 is the same for all beings, and that's very important, extremely significant. Because what we do is we see huge differences between people, and that huge difference we see between us and others is caused by the self-grasping, which has become conditioned in our mind through familiarity in the past lives by all the suffering, all the times that we have been attacked, and we have been born as predatory animals and attacked and eaten other animals, etc. It's left impressions, imprints on our mind, which when we are now, for example, in this life born, womb born into this world, our mind has got all these habits and impressions of fear, being attacked, having to attack even, animals, for example, even humans, eat other beings to survive. So it's completely selfish. Our outlook is deeply ingrained to be selfish in our mind. And that is completely against the truth. The ultimate truth is that all beings are merely imputed by the mind. But obviously that's advanced, and that's where we need to get to in the end. But the point of this talk is to try to get a pragmatic, practical practice that we can use during our normal, busy daily lives. And that really, the secret to understanding eventually that all beings are merely imputed by the mind comes from having that warm, humble respect and love for all beings. And you can do that through dealing with just one single being, perceiving one being. When you perceive any being, in that being you perceive all beings. So out there it's just one being, in here it's all beings. Do you think you can do that? That is the secret. It will completely change your heart. At the moment we are self-obsessed, right? So you have to be honest with yourself. If you're going to be Buddhist, you have to be brutally honest with what is going on in your mind. And as soon as you make the mind actually face its psychosis, it starts to back off. The arrogance, the ego starts to die. The humility comes out. And the genuine love for others is there already. It emerges, it's revealed. And life changes. Everything changes. I don't know how much you know about Buddhist, but there are many, many billions, innumerable, just as there are innumerable sentient beings stuck in delusion, believing in the self, which isn't real. There is innumerable deities, innumerable enlightened beings, and all of them will turn and look at you and protect you and guide you and help you on your path as soon as you decide to devote your life to everyone else. As long as you decide to use this life for yourself, they're not interested. There's nothing they can do. This is called the hook of compassion and the ring of faith. The ring of faith is you have faith in virtue. If you have faith in virtue, if you have faith in love, if you have faith in the altruistic view of cherishing all beings instead of yourself, the ring is complete, and then with their hook of compassion, they can help you. They can lift you up out of samsara and guide you on the path to full enlightenment. And whilst on that path from here to enlightenment, you can help many, many beings. But that is only possible as long as your mind is selfless. It mustn't be contaminated by self-concern. So that's very difficult. And also people think of selflessness as oblivion. What's the point of living if there's no self? Selflessness is not oblivion. Selflessness is enlightenment. Enlightenment is where every single being needs to be free from suffering. If without enlightenment, it's suffering. We will be reborn in suffering. Without enlightenment, we will be reborn into suffering again, next time, every time. As long as our mind is deluded, the causes of suffering are there. Get rid of the delusion, you get rid of the causes of suffering, and you will ascend. Future lives will be better and better. You'll be able to help more people. Through helping more people, you ascend. And on it goes until the mind is completely clear, completely purified into what we call the unobstructed primordial space. When you get to the unobstructed primordial space, you will find that there's no one there. You are not there. No beings are there. All beings were produced by it, in it. Just like space. All the things, Big Bang, eons, constantly exploding and imploding, exploding and imploding. Constant change. That's the suffering. But the space, indestructibly, always the same, perfectly clear. That's the pure, unobstructed space of the natural luminosity of the ground of our mind, every being's mind, since beginningless time until the end of samsara. That indestructible purity will always be there. So don't get captivated, enchanted by bodies, by rebirth bodies, by this life, by your identity. It's all rubbish. The only real thing is the actual pure luminosity of the basic nature of mind. It's where all the consciousness comes from, all the thoughts, all the perception, sensory perception, and all the information. It's all just conditioning. It's all developed since beginningless time from the primordial, just like the beings evolved from the primordial slime with hardly any thoughts, any actions, just existence, to now you've got people, trying to fly to Mars and building rockets, etc. It's all just faff. It's all just chaff. It means nothing. It doesn't matter what planets you go to, they might as well be an inch away. There's nothing compared to space. And our thoughts are nothing compared to the primordial luminosity of the nature of all beings' minds. The Buddha's mind is known as the Buddha nature, and that Buddha nature is the primordial unobstructed space. And that is the basis of our mind. Every single being has that Buddha nature. And so therefore every single being must attain enlightenment to be free from the suffering of existence. It's as simple as that. And as long as we want to exist, then what we're saying is we want suffering. If you want suffering, you carry on self-cherishing, no problem, it will come. Definitely you will remanifest as a being somewhere, and every single somewhere involves suffering. There is no place of existence where it is not suffering, because, as Buddha said, even the highest celestial realms of the gods, Their only delusion is pride. And their existence is 1.5 million years long and luxurious and wonderful. But they have what we call imperceptible suffering, which means you can't perceive it, but it's there. But it's smothered by the luxury, it's smothered by the pleasure, it's smothered by the pride. But deep down they are guided by, there's a little bit of jealousy, there's a little bit of revenge, it happens, it's still there, the delusions are still there, because self-grasping is still there. So self-grasping, this idea of a self, is what we call duality. Duality means oneself and others, subject, objectivity. As long as you've got subject, object in your mind, this is two things, and the mind is only one thing. As I've said, the primordial basic light is the same for all beings. There aren't two things in it, just like there aren't two spaces. There's only one space, it's limitless in all directions, and that's it. It's just one single thing, and the mind is that. But we have this idea of duality. And it's basically thought. This is getting a bit deep now, but basically thought is the symptom of duality. You've got the mind that can think, and then the thought. And this duality is the cause of our self-cherishing, the idea of what we call independent existence. This is the final bit now. We believe in independent existence, right? Phenomena, all reality, all phenomena can only exist in one of two ways. It can either exist as dependent existence, or it can have independent existence. A chair can even, we perceive it as independently existing. But if you check, it relies on causes. A wooden chair is made of tree. A tree is grown from the earth. You can never find any independent existence of any object. All existence is dependent existence, and therefore if it's dependent existence, it's not independent. You must realize this very deeply. All phenomena only exists dependently, and therefore it is only relatively true. It is truly existent, depending, relating to other things that are not it. No thing can be said to be independently, inherently existent within itself. It's all production. So we call this dependent. Buddha called this dependent arising. What he said was, you must realize that every phenomena is empty of a core self, empty of independent existence. All phenomena exist dependently, and therefore they are empty of independent existence. And that's how you get over the self. That's how you free the mind from the idea of you, and therefore suffering ends. The end.